Halloween is one of my favorite holidays, and I thought it would be fun to do a little mini-series called 6 Days of Halloween. Welcome to day one, where today I'm going to be reading your ghost stories. I truly do love Halloween. I used to be on the fence between Halloween and Christmas, but now, in my 25 years of life, I love Halloween so much more than I love any other holiday. So I thought it would be fun to celebrate this with you guys by giving you a video every day for the next 6 days. All of these videos are going to revolve around some element of Halloween or like the spooky ghost paranormal side. A while ago, I asked over on my Instagram if you guys had any ghost stories that you were willing to share. And can I tell you guys that you really came through? I was blown away by the amount of emails that I received. I don't know if I should be grateful as I am terrified that you guys have had so many ghost encounters. I don't necessarily believe in ghosts. I feel like it's one of those things that you just have to experience for yourself to be like a true believer. I also believe it's like one of those things that you can around and find out. Like there's a lot of ways that I feel like you can provoke the paranormal, and it's just never been one of those things that I care to find out. Halloween originated as a pagan holiday. And it was known as Samhain. On October 31st, pagans believed that the veil between the living and the dead was thinned, and a lot of ghosts would come back and revisit Earth. On the Samhain holiday is where we have gotten a lot of our traditions that have just been readapted to the present time. What I found Halloween to be was essentially a game of telephone throughout the years and the decades. It went from being a pagan holiday to being adapted to a Roman holiday to being adapted to a Christian holiday to what it is now. If you look at the original Halloween, Samhain, it was something that was a lot more spiritual. It had a lot more like practices and traditions, and I find that to be so fascinating. Samhain was this day for the community to come together and just kind of have this one night to acknowledge anyone in your life who has passed away. They had this big bonfire that would ward off any bad spirits but welcome the good spirits, your friends and your family who have passed away, and they would have treats and gifts out for the dead. So if they ever came to visit, you know, they could take a little piece of whatever they wanted back with them to the afterlife. And I just love the idea of that. I find that so cool and so fascinating. And it always kind of bums me out the way that old traditions have just kind of simmered out throughout the years. I just want to say thank you to anyone who did send me a ghost story. I know that I'm not going to be able to get around to them all today, but I really do appreciate you taking the time to send me an email. Also, make sure you're following me over on my Instagram, because I do have a lot more questions and video ideas in mind that I'm going to need your participation in. I'll stop yapping. Let's go ahead and get into your guys' ghost stories. The first ghost story is from Denaya, and she says, "It's pretty mild, but I still think about it, and it's been 12 years. I was at my uncle's house one night because they had just had a baby, and I was helping his wife with their 13-month-old son while he was at work. I was in the living room playing with him when I heard a crash in the kitchen. When I went in there thinking my aunt might have needed help, I saw the container holding the spatulas had fallen on the floor, but nobody was in there. I cleaned them up and went back into the living room right when my aunt came out of the bedroom with the baby. I asked her if she had been in the kitchen and told her about the spatulas, and she said no. We both thought it was weird, but moved on. Fast forward an hour. She had just put the 13-month-old to bed, and we were sitting on the couch with the baby. We heard noises in the kitchen, but nobody else was home. When we went to investigate together, because we were both a little scared, we found several of the spatulas laying on the floor, but the container was still sitting upright on the counter. There was no way they could have fallen out. At that point, we were both between being freaked out and thinking that the other was playing a joke. And to make matters worse, toys in the living room started going off, and the only one in there was her 1-week-old daughter. They moved out a couple months later." I just hear stories like this, and I just don't know how people go on about their life. I can't imagine going in my kitchen and just seeing spatulas lay on the floor and me being home alone. I would be under the impression that I was going crazy. I would be under the impression that I was having some sort of psychotic episode. And I just don't know how you carry on as if the most wild thing didn't just happen. The next story is from Megan G, and she says, OMG, this is my moment to shine. My childhood home in Auburn, California was haunted. We had a family and friends all throughout my childhood say they witnessed a woman in a white nightgown walking down our hallway. She would walk to the end where you would step into the living room, then vanish. Oh, one night, this was one of many encounters. I was about 16 years old, and my best friend Jessica, who was 17 at the time, came to stay over. So we are chilling on the couch, eating snacks, watching random things on TV. My mom was at LVN, and she was working a lot of 16-hour shifts, so she wasn't home at the time. It was about 11 p.m. on a Friday night. No one else was in the house. So all of a sudden, from behind us, where my garage door was located, the doorknob slowly turned. We looked at each other in panic, like someone is breaking in. The door then proceeded to slowly open. We're looking out, but the garage is pitch black. We hear these footsteps, but no one is there. So we are staring at each other, frozen in a panic, like, who's gonna get up and check? So we get up together, run towards it, slam it, and lock it. We're like, to hell with this. We book it down the hallway to my room. We slept with the lights on and my door's locked. The next day, my mom comes home and the garage door is open again. Locked, mind you. That house, when you were in it at night, it felt like you were cut off from the world. We had windows slam, footsteps on our roof. One night, my mom and her friend caught someone digging a hole in our field that was located to the left of the house in the pouring rain. We just had some really wild encounters there. My mom said when my sister died of SIDS, she was about 9 months old and died in our home. My mom attempted CPR until the ambulance arrived. She was standing in our kitchen doing dishes, looking out the window in a daze, crying. She heard someone walk up behind her. My dad had left and I was a baby. She felt a hand going up and placed upon her shoulder. She said she got goosebumps and it felt cold. She immediately turned around and no one was there. Just a couple wild stories. I'm just really putting myself in the headspace of if my door was to open all by itself. How do I move on about my life? How do I continue my day-to-day as if my door didn't just open all by itself? Also, did you not call anyone? I feel like I would be calling everyone. Like, oh my God, the door just opened. I don't even know what to do with this. Also, the person digging in the pouring rain? Did you call the cops? That ghost touching your mom? Ooh. Ooh. The next story is from McKenna, and she says, hey girl, I've been wanting to tell this story for forever. When I was younger, I had to share a room with my foster sister in the basement of my parents' house, and right outside my door was what was supposed to be the living room area, was turned into my older brother and foster brother's bedroom. This information is important for later. My foster brother's bed was basically outside my bedroom door and was by far the loudest bed in the house, as the whole bed frame was metal. There was one night that I decided I was going to stay up far past my bedtime to watch TV and ended up being the last one awake in the house. As I was watching TV, I had that feeling that I was being watched. Not just the normal feeling of being watched, but it felt so much stronger that it physically made me sick to my stomach. I turned my head to the doorway expecting to see my dad standing in the doorway. Instead, I found a black figure almost the height of the door frame. Could make out the shape of its head and shoulders, and what I could only assume was it was wearing a trench coat. I got up out of my chair and turned around as fast as I possibly could, but it was already gone and the house was so quiet you could hear a mouse fart. My brother was still passed out in their beds, not a squeak to be heard. I didn't hear anyone run up the stairs, which were just as squeaky as my foster brother's bed. I didn't turn my TV off that night, and I didn't sleep with my back to the door for a very long time. Thank you for reading. I know it's not the longest story, and it might not be the scariest, but I'm always afraid I'll see that shadow man again. Girl, that is terrifying. What are you talking about? How do you move on with your life? That's how I feel about all of these stories. If I saw a ghost man standing in the doorway, how am I supposed to be normal after that? I think if I ever was to see a ghost, I would actually go crazy. The next story is from Drew, and she says, "Hi Mercedes, my name is Drew, and this is my ghost story. So one of the houses I lived in from middle school to high school was haunted. We had a 2-story house, and on the first floor was the living room, kitchen, and master bedroom, and the second floor was me and my brother's bedroom. One night, my mom and dad couldn't sleep, so my mom eventually got up and went to the living room to check on the fire from the fireplace that we had on before bed. As my mom was stalking the fire, my dad runs out of the room and tells her that something weird just happened. He explained that he looked over in their bathroom and saw a lady with long black hair dressed up in a white nightgown brushing her hair. He then turned on the lamp beside their bed and she disappeared. After he turned the light back on, she reappeared by the door and was staring at him with a big black blob behind her creeping up the wall. He turned the light back on and ran out of the room. After that happened to him, more started happening. We would go to sleep and wake up in the middle of the night and see that all of the lights and TVs were on. A little boy woke up my brother one night and asked if he wanted to play hide and seek. One time, me and my brother were fighting and he ran into my room to hide. And when I followed him in there, the door was pushing back on me, but I finally got through it and my brother was hiding in the closet, so no one was close to the door. We found out that the hill we lived on was part of an old mining town that had exploded and killed many people. But when we sold the house my junior year, the inspector checked the electric and said that nothing was wrong with it. I never believed in ghosts before then, but now I believe without doubt that they are real. Oh my God. Your dad, is he okay? Did he ever recover from that? I can't imagine what that would be like. And I feel like you just have to kind of convince yourself that you're seeing things because that's the only logical answer to that problem. Those didn't seem harmful though. They seemed like they were just, bored and were up to no good, being a little mischievous. I feel like I would have to move immediately after what your dad saw, or someone would have to admit me into the psychiatric ward because how do you go on about your life? The next story is from Kristen, and she says, "Hi Mercedes, my name is Kristen, and this story actually happened to my husband. So a few years ago, my husband, Logan is his name, great-grandmother passed away. And when we went to her funeral, each of the kids and grandkids got to take a rose from her casket. He kept that rose in his car for a few months. Now, my husband is a volunteer firefighter at the time. We were down at the fire station one day cleaning out his car, and we decided to throw away the rose. It was dried up and falling apart, so there was really nothing left. So we tossed it in the trash. After we finished cleaning out his car, we left it where it was sitting on the trash can, sitting next to the car because he got a run. So I was just hanging out upstairs watching TV until he got back. And when he did get back, we went to get his car to go home, but the rose was sitting in the driver's seat of his car. Everyone that was there went on the run, and it was just me upstairs. Somehow that rose wound up back in his car after we had thrown it away." That was great grandma being like, "What are you doing? Put my rose back where it is." Maybe his great grandma is now his guardian angel and being in his car. She helps keep an eye on him and protect him. Great granny, you're playing games with us, aren't you? I kind of love that. That's kind of cute and scary at the same time. I'm going to share 2 more stories with you guys. The next story is from Tara, and she says, "I used to live in a super old and historic town. I worked at a haunted bed and breakfast. It wasn't advertised as haunted, and my boss was one of those ladies that you could just tell practices magic and could connect with spirits, but wasn't bothered by them. She had the most piercing blue eyes I had ever seen. One day, she was telling me about one of the woman spirits and how she liked to play tricks on people and confuse the workers and guests. It was a full day of laundry that day, and the washers and dryers were in the basement. The first thing I did was go and start a load before I stripped the beds. I always wore headphones while working, so I could never really hear anything. When I first came in there was nothing on the floor, but when I started that load and turned around, 3 bottles of fabric dye were on the ground. They were small, so I didn't really think anything of it and just assumed that I had missed it when I came in, so I put them back. I made my way to each room to strip the beds. Mind you, none of the sheets had stains or anything on them when I stripped them. The bed and breakfast had a laundry chute down to the basement, so I threw all the sheets down there and started putting the new sheets on the bed before going back to the laundry room. While I was making one of the beds, I felt a tap on my shoulder and I turned around and no one was there. So I take one of my headphones out so I can hear if anyone was in the hall or anything. I didn't hear anything, so I go to check the bathroom, and as soon as I get just about to open the door, I heard giggling. I opened the door and no one was there. Take it off because I was listening to music and thought maybe I was going crazy and didn't actually hear anything. I finished putting the new sheets on and headed down to the basement. When I walked in, 2 bottles of dye were on the ground, and now I'm starting to wonder if because my boss brought it up, the spirits were messing with me. So I pick up the bottles and put them back. Then I hear a knock on the door and go to check it, and no one was there. I was so confused and freaked out at this point, so I put my headphones back on and pretend nothing is going on. I go over to where the laundry chute is and start taking sheets out, and I keep noticing these dots of color all over the sheets until I get to the bottom of the sheet that has dye all over it, with a 3rd bottle sitting on top of it with a black handprint on the bottle. I leave the basement immediately and go upstairs to get my stuff, and I'm looking at my boss and tell her that I'm leaving because I'm too freaked out and can't find her anywhere. I'm sorry, but I'm not sitting around and waiting for her because I was too freaked out. So I go out the front door and down the steps, and I'm probably about 30 feet away, and I look back at the bed and breakfast, and I look at one of the windows, and I see one of the blinds, the piercing blue eyes staring down and watching me leave. I never went back to work there. What? Ew, 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 ew. I hate that. Especially turning around and seeing the blue eyes. No, I hate that. So what if your boss was a ghost? Is that possible? Is that possible that she was... Why was she staring at you like that? If it was your boss, we don't know who it was. You just saw the blue eyes? Ew, I don't like that. Honestly, same though. I would leave. I would pack up my stuff and I would leave without a second guess. And the fact that did they ever call you and be like, girl, where you at? You didn't finish your shift. What the hell happened to these sheets? Ugh, God. The last ghost story that I have to share with you is coming from Andy, and she says, "Hi Mercedes, I love your book reviews and content. Sending you all the very best. I've added some pictures for context. Anyway, here's my spooky story. My husband and I love to camp in the backcountry of Ontario, Canada. We usually do a 5 to 6 day trip covering around 80 to 100 kilometers. First day, we usually take it really easy, enjoying the late start and having a midday snack in a canoe and stop at a small island on whichever lake we are on. On this particular trip, I was 5 months pregnant and I wanted to take it easy, so when the wind picked up, we pulled into the first island we saw to eat and rest. Right away, it was a little different because Canoe Lake is usually very busy. It is an access point to a lot of other lakes, and a lot of people have to cross it to start or end their routes. We had been paddling for an hour and we only saw 2 or 3 other canoes, but we just thought it was because of the forecast for the week and that people had postponed their trips. Once we pulled onto this little island, we saw a dock and realized that we were on the island that had the Tom Thomason Cairn Memorial, which includes a brass plate affixed onto a huge boulder. Quick little Canadian history lesson here. The Park of Algonquin is a beautiful history area in Canada.
Canada?
I've been reading for too long. It is over 7,000 square kilometers and has thousands of lakes. In the early 19,000s, a painter named Tom Thomason lived a nomadic life canoeing around the park and capturing the scenery in beautiful oil sketches. On July 8, 1917, he mysteriously drowned and was discovered floating in Canoe Lake. There was a lot of theories about what happened to the skilled outdoorsman, but no one knows for sure. His art is loved by Canadians, but his death has always been a Canadian folk story, especially when paddling in Algonquin. So anyways, back to the story. We walked up to the memorial with our snacks to sit and eat while enjoying a tourist-free look at the monument. Having both been there before, we knew where it was and what the plaque had said, so we just settled down for a quick break and then headed back on the water. As we were eating, the sky went from blue to black in about 2 minutes, and we were suddenly in a torrential rainstorm. We started scrambling to cover our gear in the canoe and grab our rain gear when all of a sudden there was a huge boom of thunder. We quickly flipped the canoe on shore and tied it off, or just kind of in awe of the storm, watching the lightning crash and the waves roll. All of a sudden, we hear a huge crash. We look to our right and see that the boulder holding the brass plate is completely split in two, straight down the middle, right through the brass and rock. At the time, we thought it may have been a lightning strike or maybe a tree branch had hit it, but we didn't linger to find out. We took off by the time we were getting back on the water. The storm had moved on and the sky was blue again. Fast forward 5 days and we are passing back through the canoe lake after the trip. Naturally, we stopped at the memorial again. There were tourists everywhere and tour guides, but the monument was whole, not even a crack. I asked the tour guide when they had replaced it, and he had no idea what I was talking about. Once we got back to shore, we went into the ranger station and asked the staff if they had replaced the monument, and they said they hadn't. When we told them what happened, they were in shock. They said they had no reports of any storms that day. Keep in mind, the ranger station was about 6 miles from the monument, so they definitely would have experienced the same storm as us. We couldn't explain what happened. A week later, I went to visit the Tom Tomlinson grave in an old churchyard, just to pay my respects. Surprised to find the grave area roped off and covered by a makeshift tarp tent. So I went inside the church and I asked what happened, and the man there told me that the stone had recently damaged in a storm and they were protecting it until it could be repaired. I never asked if it split in two because I was shocked and scared, so I just bolted. I've never been back to the grave to see if there are any cracks or damage, and now when we paddle through Canoe Lake, we take the long way to avoid the memorial. I don't know what happened that day, but it is the most haunting experience of both our lives. Hope you enjoyed my story. I included some pictures of the memorial, Tom Tomlinson and his work, as well as some of the photos from our trip, which I will include right here. That is a big ass boulder. That's a big rock to just split into. I feel like you could write a book about this, or at least a movie for sure, and maybe add a little bit more ghost, spooky, scary on top of that. Because what crazy is that you saw the boulder split in half, and then his actual gravesite had damage on it from a recent storm. Oh my god! But like, how strong of a ghost do you have to be to like create such a visual? You know, of the rock splitting in half. You should have took a picture. You should take a picture, because that would be crazy if you had the evidence. But what would be even crazier is if you took the picture and then you went to look back at the picture and it was like a normal rock. You just took a picture of the monument. Oh my God, Tom Thompson, what are you up to, sir? Yeah, so I don't like any of this. My main question is, if you've ever encountered a ghost, how do you move on with your life? How do you live a normal life knowing that the paranormal world is just watching you? A ghost could be watching me right now. A lot of them, actually. There could be like 20 ghosts in my bedroom and I would have no idea. Again, I just want to thank anyone who sent me a ghost story, and I'm sorry to the ones that I wasn't able to get around to today. This is the conclusion for day 1 of 6 days of Halloween. Stay tuned tomorrow, where I take you on the journey of getting my tarot cards read in New Orleans. That's all I have for you guys today. Okay, bye. Love you.